I'm going to record before I forget. Awesome. We have with us Lorena Shank, and she is a management and program analyst at the Peace Corps. She's a returned Peace Corps volunteer from Peru. Lorena has experience in higher education during her time at the GW University in the graduate admissions and graduate advising. She attended American University where she earned her bachelor's in international relations and affairs. We're super excited to have you. And then we have Elaine, who currently lives in Maryland, yes, and works for the federal government as a budget analyst. For her undergrad, she attended UMD, where she studied finance and operations management. She also attended graduate school part-time at Johns Hopkins University online and at the DC campus, where she earned her Master's of Science in Government Analytics. Sounds awesome. So I'll go ahead and give the floor over to you guys.
Hey everyone, just one sec. Let me share my screen real quick. We just put together a quick PowerPoint. One sec. I have too many windows open right now. Should be this. Oh, oops. Lorena, could you possibly share your screen? My security settings on my laptop, I forgot. I would have to leave Zoom. Sorry about that.
Oh, sure. Let me try that right now. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all.
Sorry about that. Forgot how my Zoom settings were set up.
Does everyone see my screen right now? Is it looking okay? Yeah, I see thumbs up. Let's see how this works. And I'm also on my Apple, so I'm just like, let's see how this works. All right, ready to go? Sound good? Eileen, can you see it? Okay. Well, hi everyone. Me and Elaine are going to talk about steering into federal opportunities. We thank you so much for participating with us today. And again, we would love to just also have this as an open forum because it's a small workshop. So please feel free to interrupt and ask questions. We're more than happy to address them. Did you want to go next and talk about our overview?
Sure, yeah. So we just plan on talking about our individual experiences with the federal government. We both bring a vast range of how we entered federal service and what we're currently doing now, and some of the best practices and resume tips that we've encountered through applying through the entire process, and then some helpful links in the end for anyone who's interested as well. So just to start off with some stats and some of the different federal jobs that you might not be aware of, over 2.1 million people are considered civilian government employees. That's pretty huge. And as you've seen, government is pretty big in this area, but it's also nationwide depending on what roles and agencies you work for. There's a variety of jobs. You could be a park ranger with the National Park Service, to a wildlife biologist with the Fish and Wildlife Service, even an undercover agent with the FBI, astronaut with NASA, work as a test pilot with the Federal Aviation Administration, a meteorologist with NOAA, scientists at NIH, or even cybersecurity experts at various agencies. There's so many different opportunities, and it's just a matter of looking and just doing your research.
All right. So I'm just going to talk about my personal experience. And when I graduated from college, I ended up deciding to do the Peace Corps. And I'll talk about both Peace Corps and AmeriCorps. And just a little bit of context, what I heard only a little bit of what Sandra was saying earlier, but For sure, I had to pivot immediately. When I went to American, I graduated a semester early, and I was trying to apply to graduate school, and I didn't get in. And I was abroad, and I was like heartbroken. I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I ended up pivoting and researching into Peace Corps. And I ended up doing Peace Corps for 27 months after college, after I graduated. And again, as many of us were first gen, and my mom is from Ecuador, and my dad is Bolivian, and grew up in the DMV area, and they were very much against me doing it. At that time, the internet was just coming out. That ages me, but I would get mailings from Peace Corps, and my family would throw it out. They were just like, "You're not doing this. Like, why would you ever go volunteer in a developing country when we're from these countries and we decided to come to the US to have a better life? And what are you doing?" Like, they just didn't understand what this meant, and they thought it was super dangerous. So, but I did it. I did it anyways. I applied and went through the process of severed me, and it worked out. Some folks don't always know about Peace Corps and AmeriCorps. I didn't know about AmeriCorps. I learned it actually later in life, which I think is the domestic part of doing volunteering in the US, which I think is amazing. If I would have known about it, I would have done that too during my college. But basically, AmeriCorps, it's very time limit. You can do it in your summers. You can do it for a semester anywhere in the US. And they partner with various organizations, private and public. And it's only in the US. Peace Corps, on the other hand, it is a 27-month commitment. That's the one I did right after. You typically do have to have like a college degree. And you can apply to a specific country or a specific field. Developing skills are the fields pretty much, and you can go abroad for 27 months, and you have like 3 months of language training, and then you live with the community at their level. And so timing, I highlight this because, again, in AmeriCorps, you can be at least 17, which is, to me, wild to think like, oh wow, I could have been doing this at 17. But again, it's only within the US. And they have a very thorough application process where you can really be specific on, like, if you wanted to work or volunteer and develop skills in a certain area, that you're like, hey, I'm really interested in like homelessness and like how it affects urban cities or rural areas, or I'm really interested in agriculture, like food security, and I want to work with an organization like that in a certain like state or something like that. So they're very, very specific and targeted with AmeriCorps. And then again, Peace Corps, again, it's typically after college that you would do it, and you apply, and you again serve for 27 months. And then my idea with Peace Corps when I did it was, again, pivoting from that, tragedy of not getting to grad school, I was just like, you know what, I have 2 years is not so bad, because I know I'm going to be sitting in a cubicle for the rest of my life. So I was like, I'm going to be able, like, and this is okay. Like, so I thought of the long-term game. And plus, usually where I was applying, they wanted 2 years of experience. And I was like, done. I was like, I am going to do this. Like, so that's why I selected Peace Corps. But again, AmeriCorps, you could do the same thing. And AmeriCorps, again, you can do just a semester or a summer, or do a full year. And then here you develop skills. You develop all of these skills depending on what you want to focus on. You can't, but typically you have like a primary program at Peace Corps or at AmeriCorps that you're developing, like within education, business, nonprofit, agriculture, environment, and health. And between those, like, you have like subsets. In Peace Corps, I served as a business volunteer, but my actual program was ICT, information communication technology, because again, that's when the internet was just starting. It was in 2004. Amazing. And then I did my secondary project was business. I helped start up a little store with folks in Peru, to artisan store. And then like my claim to fame is that they're in all of these guides now, like Peru guides. If you look up my town, you'll see the store that we help start up. So developing skills, depending on what that is. And then again, with Peace Corps, which is pretty unique, I would also say probably in AmeriCorps as well, is that you can develop a new language if you want to. Like for me, I served in Peru, so my Spanish was just enhanced, but you could serve somewhere else, Thailand, or in Africa, all of the different native languages there. So that's also a unique thing that Peace Corps does offer. And then the benefits for both, I think, are, again, the living allowance is very modest. And that is very, you all have to be aware of that. Again, my family was totally against it. They're like, why would you want to live? I lived on $300 a month for 2 years. So $300, which is not a lot at all. But in those countries that you're serving, it's a lot of money. And for AmeriCorps, they also do adjust the stipend, but the living allowance in Peace Corps is very, very modest. Also, if you do complete either service, you get money for college or trade school. I'm pretty sure for AmeriCorps, it's more during your undergraduate degree or your community college. For Peace Corps, for graduate school, you could be considered for fellowships. Also, you get loan deferment and interest forbearance pretty much in both. I kind of, right after college, I had a lot of loans, but I was able to have them for, deferment for like 2 years, and that was okay. And at the time, I think they were giving me, they gave me some monies to pay off a Perkins loan. So that was great. Also, a big thing for me was healthcare. Growing up, I didn't always have healthcare. So that was really, really big for me too. And both give you healthcare for free because you're serving. I always say that was the best healthcare I've ever had, because if anything hurt or anything bothering, Peace Corps was going to cover it. And they did, thankfully. So I appreciated having healthcare for those 2 years. And then for Peace Corps specifically, I know I don't think AmeriCorps has this. You get a readjustment allowance. After you complete your service, you get $10,000. That's pre-tax. I think it becomes like $8,000 to $9,000. But you get that readjustment allowance. So you use that to do whatever you like after you finish, which is really, really nice. And then professional development here with the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps. The nice thing is, because you're technically not a federal employee, but once you complete your service, you get this non-competitive eligibility, which is as a hiring mechanism to get into federal work. And so that's, I think, really important and makes you more of an attractive candidate to apply when you do a federal service. And then you get this huge alumni network. Like with AmeriCorps, it's 1 million people. And Peace Corps, it's 240,000 folks, and that's all over the US or internationally. So I feel like, Peace Corps kind of launched my career. It varied. Now I'm in the federal work service. When I was in Peace Corps and I finished Peace Corps, I ended up doing higher ed for a decade. So both of these are, different paths that kind of lead you to the same, and because now I'm a federal worker. So I think, you have an opportunity to serve if that's what you would feel like doing, and get these benefits later once you're done with your service. So that was AmeriCorps and Peace Corps.
Hey everyone, thanks Lorena, that was great. I learned a lot more about AmeriCorps and Peace Corps that I didn't know of. And so my last job, I was a DHS budget analyst, and we just hired 2 Peace Corps. So it relates to Lorena's point about how Peace Corps alum are now eligible for federal jobs. And they kind of skip more of the USA jobs in a way. So it's a little bit easier to hire from those pool of candidates than, say, from the public. But anyways, I wanted to talk about, I had my experience with the Pathways program, which was talked about earlier this morning in the workshop a little bit, but I'm going to go a little bit more in depth and talk about some of the different parts of it and some of the tips related to it. So my journey with Pathways, I think I was in college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. This must have been my sophomore to junior year. One of my friends said, hey, you should just apply for a federal job. There's a lot of applications, and even though the application process does take a long time, once you get in, it's kind of an easier way to see and learn what you want to do. So I kind of fell into this in a different way. So under Pathways, there's 3 different options under the program. There's the Internship Program geared towards high school and undergraduate students. There's the Recent Graduates programs for recent college grads. I think it's within 2 years after you get your college degree. And then the Presidential Management Fellows PMF program. And this is for graduate students. It's a bit more competitive program, but definitely also worth pursuing. If you fall into that and are interested, you are placed in a 2-year rotation among different agencies and roles. I've met a lot of cool people through it, so it's definitely a program. Also great. All three great options depending on where you are in your life. So with the internship program, it really depends on the agency where you get hired. If you haven't navigated USA Jobs, it's the main central portal for you to look at what's available, different roles and programs during different agencies. It's kind of confusing sometimes to navigate, but in a way, it's the best way to apply to a Pathways program internship. A lot of the roles for student trainees and interns are usually administrative based jobs. So you'll be doing probably a lot of data entry, reconciliation, and depending on the agency's mission, you might get placed doing different things. I think for the most part, out of my friend group who ended up joining through Pathways, we did a mix of administrative. So that meant from data analysts to budget to contracts. So it really varied. On the other hand, I had a friend who was a graduate student trainee, but she ended up working or being funded by different science agencies for her research roles. Right now, because of the pandemic, there's currently full flexible telework capabilities that might change in the next couple months depending on each agency. So it really varies what kind of flexibilities, but they have all kind of set up their virtual onboarding, and it really ranges from part-time to full-time. At my previous job, we've hired interns that worked as many as like 12 hours to full-time. So it really depends on your class schedule and your supervisor and what the budget is. So that's always a discussion to always have if you apply and when you accept the position, to outline what works best for you and them. And another perk of the Pathways program is you can kind of avoid the USA Jobs competitive application process once you're in the role. When you finish a certain number of hours and your education requirements, if your agency has a spot open on the team to convert you, that's definitely a discussion you need to have with the supervisor. So that's kind of how I went from an intern during my undergraduate years to a full-time position after I graduated. And since then, I've been pretty much working through different agencies. So I first started my career at NIST as an intern, went into grants, then went to DHS headquarters for budget. Working at the headquarters level was a lot better than working at like the individual agencies. And now I actually just recently switched jobs to General Services Administration, doing automation and business intelligence. So that's a quick recap of the Pathways program and kind of my experience with it. So with the internship program, again, like I mentioned, you apply on USA Jobs. If you aren't familiar with the site, please check it out. It's gotten a lot more user-friendly since within the last 10 years, I think. But it is still kind of confusing because they throw a lot of terminology at you, and you just have to be careful on what they're asking for, because sometimes HR, depending on who reviews it, might disagree with some interpretation of things. So that's always something to look out for. For the resume, so there's two different options you can do in USA Jobs. You can either upload the PDF of your resume. I find that the easiest because it's easy to have like one PDF that you use for multiple things. Or you can build your resume in the default builder in USA Jobs. So it's like a form, you fill out your different positions. Sometimes they'll ask salary, supervisor, and they just kind of put that all together. As you kind of explore when you're still in the internship position, I think it's safe to say stick to uploading a PDF. But I've seen success with both ways. So it's really up to your preference, and just make sure that you reread the posting to that it includes everything that they ask for. So sometimes they will ask like, oh, what is your salary? What is your supervisor? Can you provide a number for them? So it's just different things like that that do kind of slightly vary, but something to look out for. When you look at when you're looking for positions, search for student training positions, and they'll pop up a bunch of positions that will vary across agencies, and just kind of look through. You can kind of tell when you're reading through the roles and responsibilities, kind of get a feel for it. If it's kind of vague, it's because they're still defining what projects you're working on, but they still need someone who does that. So it's always good to just kind of definitely read and see if it appeals to you too. As part of the application process, you'll complete a quick, or depends, an assessment or questionnaire, and answer it to the best of your ability. If you can say like you've had any sort of experience doing what they're asking for, say like, oh, I have experience doing an Excel spreadsheet on my own without any supervision. Yeah, if you've done it in class and you've done it on your own, you can definitely say like, yeah, I can definitely do that on my own with little to no supervision. Again, most of these roles encourage you to ask questions and learn during this time. And in my experience, I've had really good people who have helped show me the rope. And if not, they've always been open to asking questions. Um, so a lot of places that do have a more robust intern program. So a question to ask is like, have you hired interns before? What was their experiences? The ones that have had regular interns coming in and out do have a better way of treating and teaching the interns. Unfortunately, with USA Jobs, it is a numbers game. The application process can be so long because HR, budget, security clearance. So just apply anything you see, just apply as soon as you can and just send off your resume. So that's why I kind of recommend like having your PDF already uploaded and everything, because once you see a job, it's pretty easy to click through everything. And once you get into the swing of things, you can like apply to as many applications as possible. Like when I went from my first federal job to my second federal job, this was during a hiring freeze in 2016. Shortly after, I must have sent over 100 to 150 applications just because you don't know the other factors affecting an agency. They're a lot better at getting back to you faster in the more recent years, in the last 2 to 4 years. But again, it's always good to have like as many options as you can. And depending on timing, you're not quite sure when they'll reach it. Agencies can take a while to respond, and I'll cite, so I just moved from DHS to GSA. I interviewed in September. I did not hear back from my job until beginning of November. So it's this, and I had no idea. I thought I tanked that interview. So it was a pleasant surprise that I got it, but still just keep in mind, unfortunately with government, it will take a while to sometimes onboard and get the job. So that's something to keep in mind as you're thinking about timing and your security clearance. Most interns, I think all of them, are just at a public trust. Unfortunately, that can take 2 to 3 months to do. It really depends on how backlogged the security office is and how much experience or things they have to search through your history and all the references you put down too. So that's just something to keep in mind. For instance, for this summer internship, possibly, it's best to start applying now because they'll probably start their interviews in the March timeframe, usually March to June timeframe. And just kind of keep in mind, keep applying, you never know. And they do a lot of their hiring in the summer and fall months just due to how the budget fiscal year works. So they try to spend all their money at the end. But again, continuously, like if you see something, start applying.
And I know we're going to be running out of time, but we thought these were like some best practices, and we'll go over a little bit of it. CDI is awesome. Again, I wish I had done this and being mentored. I feel like it takes a village. You know, like Sandra was saying earlier, like folks, you'll be kind of hear it over and over. You know, your community helps you, and and I'll be jumping around with the networking portion, but like your family, your professors, family, friends. You would be surprised of how many people do work for the government and like you just didn't know. Now thinking back, I was like, oh, that person worked there and there. And I'm like, I should have said something, but you know, you don't. But that's really important. I think it's just networking doesn't have to be very you know, like you have to go to an event or anything, but honestly, just asking questions, like kind of informational, just be like, what do you do? Do you like, just like Elaine was saying, like, you know, do you have internships? Like how, you know, everybody wants to help out everybody from my personal experience, because we all want everybody to succeed. So I feel like if, you know, you push yourself out there, best foot forward, you know, you'll get an awesome like response, I think personally. And if you don't, try somebody else and it's okay. Also your LinkedIn profile, I think is very important. Your branding, as I heard earlier, you know, try to keep it up to date, clean, you know, and it kind of ties into your career centers. It's free. Like your career center is free. And since you're in college or in even high schools, I know have career centers, like they offer so many resources. You just have to make the time and look into it. And then I know they have like workshops to get your profile picture done. So all you got to do is show up looking really nice and just have a professional photographer take a picture of you. Also to do any more workshops on USA jobs, because it does take a bit of time and you know, getting used to how to apply to federal government jobs. And resume writing, you'll have like dedicated like career advisors telling you how to, you know, do your resume your first time, and then afterwards it just kind of becomes you know, routine. So please use your career center, I think, you know, when applying to federal jobs, so you can learn how to get the swing of things. I put this in like because I know it can happen. Professionalism. It's still, federal government is pretty, in the sense, pretty old school. They do want to see, like, if you want to talk to somebody, like here the example was like, you can email me, feel free, like, hey Lorena, how are you? I don't know, you know, it's kind of like, it's a little bit better to put your best foot forward and say, hello, Lorena Shank, how are you? Versus, you know, kind of texting, just because again, um, there is a bit of, you know, culture shift working with the federal workforce, and just showing that professionalism. And then your short-term gain versus long-term gain. And I put this down because again, the way I got into federal service was, you know, I did a different path. I did my volunteering for 2 years, could have gone into federal work service right after, but I decided not to. I decided to go to higher ed and then come to federal work service. And you just, you know, and it worked out. I mentioned here the long-term, like my husband, on the other hand, he did the opposite. He did his volunteer service, then went right into federal work service, and he's had a long career now with the federal work service. So it's really up to you, just kind of like, you know, seeing what you're willing to be flexible with, what your pathway is. And there's going to be hurdles and those rejections. It is a numbers game when applying. It took me a while to get my federal job at PeaceCorps headquarters, that's in DC. And just like Elaine was saying, like I think I applied to my position. I got interviewed for other positions, but I applied specifically for the position that I started at PeaceCorps as a assessment specialist in July. And then I didn't hear back till September. And again, I also thought I bombed the interview, and I didn't. And then by October, I had my security clearance, and then I onboarded in November. So it took like about 4 months to actually get my foot in the door. But before that, I was applying, and I applied for 2 years, and I finally got in. But using all of these best practices, I think really did help and trying to get in. So yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, and just kind of building off what Lorena talked about. Again, all these points were the points on the right I've made beforehand in my previous slide. But yeah, reaching out again on LinkedIn. I was in a leadership program. I needed to interview someone. I randomly typed in what I was interested in, which agency I was curious about, just messaged them, and they were more than happy to talk with me about what they did, how they got into it. Definitely took away a lot of cool things. So definitely just people will be more than happy to do informational interviews with you. You can also, if you're big into Reddit has a great subreddit about federal work. I think the main one is Fed News, r/Fed News. That's also a great resource to kind of get a feel of like what federal employees do, talk about, and the different, like, if you have more specific questions, because government hiring really gets into very specific niche language that makes no sense to anyone outside of the government sphere. Um, and yeah, a lot of good benefits with it too. And we can, if you're ever interested in hearing about the more boring adult parts with retirement benefits and everything, we're more than happy to talk about that too. But overall, yeah, it's, if you incorporate all these practices and again have like your village to, or your people that you trust to review everything, then make sure you just put your best foot forward, quantify any impact you've had, remember to use active verbs in the right tense, and just yeah, just go through and practice with everyone. Thanks.
We added these links for you all to consider. If I think afterwards you'll be able to have access to this, like USA Jobs, AmeriCorps, PeaceCorps, the pathway programs, LinkedIn profile advice. But again, I think CDI has a whole slew of stuff. Building networks, the Harvard Business Review, I feel like was really good because I feel like in high school and undergrad, I didn't really think about this. You kind of think about it later, and then it's like, aha, like, you know, trying to build that network and how to do it, because it can feel a little awkward in the beginning. And then I found this Young Government Leaders, YGL. It's there's various chapters in the nation, and if you're in the DMV area, there's the National Capital Chapter, but that's also for like young emerging like leaders and, you know, folks about to graduate from undergrad and onwards. So something for your future consideration if you'd like. And then I think that's it. Questions? I can see everyone again.
Awesome. That was great. I'm sitting here like nodding my head, taking notes. Like, this is wonderful. We appreciate both of you. One of the questions that was actually forwarded to me by a student who couldn't make it today was on security clearance and how, like, if you all could talk a little bit more about just like how to get the process started, how does it work? It can be intimidating to some, just hearing security clearance.
For me, security clearance, it is one of those things that agency for agency have their own way of kind of doing it. It depends on the job. And when you apply in USA Jobs, it will tell you the type, if you were to be referred and interviewed and accept a position, then you start going through that process to get that security clearance. And it just depends. There's just various levels. Correct me if I'm wrong, Elaine. It's like, I think it's like public trust and then secret, top secret, and then there's like an echelon of others that is just like for like other careers and whatnot. But those are like pretty much the top three. And so my first one was public trust, and it's kind of like you fill out paperwork, like they check out your credit, just your personal credit, and then you know, who you are, you know, in just basic information. You do have to be a US citizen or permanent resident to apply for any federal jobs. And then if you get further than that, and I had received a level of clearance before, that's when you do, if for State Department, for certain positions, you do have to talk to an investigator and fill out a form online that is very, very detailed. And you just have to be honest. And and with the investigators, you'll talk to them and they tell you what you should put down and how to be forthcoming about certain information. So but it's been pretty straightforward, and they only look at you as a person, not your family. They only look at you. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, and just going off, yeah, like Lorena said, it does vary across agencies how they do it. Like when I had public trust, I actually did have an investigator come to my college dorm to interview me and make sure that things were done. When I got my secret, I had to fill out much more paperwork, and like the clearance process still takes a long time because each agency does it differently. It builds off what you previously submitted. Something I have to do now, I keep a separate spreadsheet of all the places, because they'll ask you, where have you traveled in the last 7 years? And you're like, oh my God. They'll ask you your previous landlords and previous addresses from like the last, I think, 10 years or something. And you have to like remember, try to reach out to them if possible and still have their contact information. And then just send them like a heads up, like, hey, you'll probably get this in the mail. FYI, please fill it out. And if you have any questions, let me know and stuff like that. So definitely have your top 3 references and all your previous landlords.
Second that, just keep a copy of that. Like whenever you fill out your first security clearance, keep a PDF, and they let you, of what you did, because every time it's kind of repetitive of like that information. And if you deviate, that's a red flag. You don't want to deviate. Just make sure you do it right the first time and then keep that as a copy. That's somebody who gave me some advice in the federal, like keep a copy of what you gave them, and then moving forward, you can use that as your base.
Thank you. That was super helpful. I didn't know that. That's a great tip to have. Yeah. Are there any other questions? I know we're going to close out in like 2 seconds at best.
It's great. Yeah.